Welcome, everyone, to today's town hall on Arizona State University's Work Integrated Learning Accelerator. I'm really excited about this conversation today and so pleased to be joined by two wonderful colleagues from Arizona State University, Dr. Sukhwant Jhaj, Vice Provost for Academic Innovation and Student Achievement, and Dr. Brandee Popaden-Smith, Senior Director of ASU's University College. Today's conversation will be of interest to all of you, I think, because most research universities are really thinking critically right now about how to prepare students for what we call, and this is a Kathy Davidson reference for many of you, world readiness, so preparing students for their career, citizenship, and life. But a big part of that is the career piece and bringing work integrated learning experiences into the curriculum so that all students have the ability to learn what it's like to be in the workplace and learn employer-ready skills while they're getting their education. ASU obviously is a leader in this space, as many of you know, and has done this tremendously well. And I'm really excited to have Sukhwant and Brandee share what they've been doing with the Work Integrated Learning Accelerator, which is not just limited to ASU, but is aiming to scale their approach with other institutions. So without further ado, let me just go over a couple quick housekeeping items. This may be a big event today, so if you would please remain muted unless you have a question. You can raise your hand and then we'll unmute you to contribute to the conversation. But please also feel free to put questions in the chat throughout this conversation. We'll be watching the chat closely and making sure your questions are answered. So I will turn things over to Brandee and Sukhwant.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's absolutely a pleasure to join you all for this conversation today. I'm Sukhwant Jhaj, Dean of University College, and what we'll do today is give you an overview of our work. Please know that this is work in progress. We are doing many of these things. You'll get a sense of our approach. You'll get a sense of how we have structured some of these things, where we are with the work. There are two key projects we'll talk about when we talk about work integrated learning, Work Plus and Work Integrated Learning Accelerator. I'll give you a sense of how we work. Towards the end, you will have our sort of contact details. And please know, we have deep interest in working with our colleagues and changing outcomes for students in higher education, particularly using work integrated learning. Before we get into the details, let me talk a little bit about University College. What is it that we are doing and what are some of our design goals? So broadly speaking, our work is organized around three areas, and think of University College as a sandbox also for the provost office. So when we have to launch initiatives quickly, when we want to test certain ideas out, we reach out to University College, so I have these dual roles. And then University College also houses a number of services that are used by all undergraduate students. So some of you are familiar with that structure, probably lead those efforts on your campuses. In addition to that, University College serves as home for exploratory students at ASU. We have three distinct goals. How do we design personalized learning experiences to end achievement disparities? Secondly, how may we design for an integrated work and learning future? We know work is in the middle of significant change. I don't need to get into the details here. You are leading undergraduate education on your campus, so you're well aware of this, and as is learning. And so what does this integrated future looks like? And then lastly, how might we design services to support learners at scale using design thinking, analytics, automation, and intelligent agents? And intelligent agents, all I want to say here is some of these goals were written almost 6 years ago when that particular terminology was not that cool. Our design principles, I'll just focus on two here. Learners first. We begin with a focus on learners' need and largely on collaboration. Again, a call out. We believe in radical collaboration, both inside and outside our institution. So if you are interested in this work, if you want to sort of use our work as a starting point to launch the things that you are doing, or want simply access to information, please reach out to us. We are here to assist our colleagues in changing the status of these things in higher education. With that, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to my colleague, Brandee Popaden-Smith, who's leading this work for ASU, for University College, and she'll walk us through that. I'll join back in during the question and answer session and talk a little bit more about strategy from institutional perspective, etc. Brandee?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sukhwant. Really excited to spend some time with everybody today. And I can't emphasize enough what Sukhwant mentioned about this all being a work in progress. I lovingly refer to us in some of our projects and initiatives being on like version 9.2 of these things. We have, spent many years doing this work, and what it looks like now looks very different from what it did 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And we fully anticipate it's going to look very different in 2 to 3 years from now as well. So our hope is to simply share some of what we've learned along the way, where we're at now, and especially to the point of the collaboration that Sukhwant mentioned, really what we're learning from our colleagues. Every time we get a chance to work with a new institutional partner across the country, one of the first things that I try to share is that, our goal here is to learn with you and learn from you. And that is what our hope for the conversation today is too. While we share out, like I said, what we've learned so far and what we're hearing, we also very much welcome for you all to share. And so I put a couple questions on the screen that I encourage as we go through the conversation today to be thinking about, and feel free to use the chat. We will actually be getting a transcript from the chat just for us internally to help us. We are constantly looking to learn from any of the folks that we get a chance to interact with. And so as we talk about work integrated learning, and you'll see that I abbreviated as WIL in a lot of these slides today, but as you see these questions on the screen, what stands out for you that we're talking about? Where do you think about opportunity within your institution? Where do you think about policies or structures that are either possibly could be leveraged to actually enable the scaling of WIL, opening accessibility to WIL experiences? Or are there places where you can see policies and structures that might be standing in the way of that? What does that look like? What does that feel like? That knowledge helps us understand some of the national work that I'll talk about shortly too. How do we need to think about, as higher education institutions, actually engaging differently with our industry and our community partners to really support the scaling of WIL? And the other side of that, right? How do we really create this nice two-way street between higher education and industry and community partners? Where can we tap those partners to think about how they're approaching work integrated learning differently, that we know can be ways that actually really accelerate that accessibility and the engagement. So we get to a point that all of our learners, before they're graduating, they have the opportunity to engage in at least one, hopefully more than one, work integrated learning experience. And really thinking about this piece around technology. How do we see technology actually enabling the scaling of WIL, or possibly inhibiting it? If your students are anything like some of what we hear from our students here at ASU, they don't want one more platform to have to log into, right? They don't want to have another place, a bookmark they have to remember, a place they have to think to go to. So we're really diving deep into this concept of knowing that technology it can be a huge enabler and facilitator, but how does it actually integrate into the student experience in a way that's easy for them to adopt, that they can embrace, and it becomes a part of their experience really nicely. So just a couple questions. As other things come to mind, please feel free to put those into the chat again. They help us so much and learning from your perspectives as well. So with that, I kind of want to launch into just a little bit of kind of grounding our work and our why. What led us to really rethink this concept of working and learning? And I'm sure many of you are going to be familiar with some of the data that I'm going to show across the next couple slides, but we pull them all together because we think that we need to bring all of these data points and this research together to actually understand why we need to focus on work integrated learning, why work integrated learning is really an opportunity for us to rethink the student experience in a way that is going to actually lead to both economic and non-economic positive outcomes for our students post-completion. So in this slide, highlighting a couple different data points of both where, when we understand employment rates, when we understand also the stickiness of employment or underemployment, I think it's important those last two data points to highlight. If we are not setting students up for success immediately upon completion, they can find challenges getting stuck there and not necessarily being as easily to move out into roles that really are aligned with the credential or the degree that they've earned. And so this is really trying to echo and double click into this We want to make sure that immediately upon completion that our students are ready and they are launching into those opportunities that they're most interested in and are really helping them feel like my education was worth the time, the financial, the effort investment that I put into it as well. We also clearly care about our learners graduating and feeling like I get to engage in work that feels purposeful to me, that feels aligned with my values or my interests, that I can actually leverage and activate on strengths and skills that I've built a part of the experience. We care about that too. And one of the things that when we look at work integrated learning for many, many years, one of the most popular forms of work integrated learning, and there's been significant progress made in this space, is around internships. Internships for a while now have been really the gold standard example of work integrated learning. And there's been so much progress on a national level, especially of really increasing the quality of internships, building internships into more and more degree programs for our students across the country, ensuring that we've gone away from the days of internships simply being sitting at a desk and fetching the Starbucks order in the morning, right? To really, intentionally designed experiences that we can actually articulate and clarify learning outcomes for our learners that engage with them. So a lot of progress made there. But the challenge we're hitting right now is we simply don't have enough of them, and they are not as accessible as they need to be for all learners across the country. Highlighting this data that came out of the Business Higher Education Forum study that was done a couple years back, if we look at the number of learners who actually wanted an internship compared to those that got one, as well as the quality of the experience they got, you can see we've got a pretty big disparity here. And what this is really pointing to is that internships simply aren't enough. They are important, they are necessary. We want to continue to focus on them and think about how we build more of them and engage more learners. But we just can't rely exclusively on them or focus too heavily on them because we simply will not have all of our learners being able to engage in these kinds of experiences. And to really kind of reinforce what do we know very directly about work integrated learning experiences and the type of impact they have on our learners. And I have the pleasure of working with Sukhwant on a very regular basis, and I will share some thoughts that he shares with us a lot. And really, it's about this trajectory of where we've been in higher ed and how we have focused our work from a place of a strong focus on accessibility. How are we getting learners in and actually accessing higher education experiences? And as we've shifted into a place of a huge focus on completion, great, we've opened the doors wider. We're enabling more learners to access the experience. How are we making sure that we're getting them to graduation, right? That they're actually completing the credentials that they're pursuing. They're really able to, we're thinking about the design of the experience to ensure that's actually retaining those students and they're persisting to graduation. And we're on the cusp now of shifting into, I think, an important conversation, which is really about post-completion success too. We get them in, we keep them here, we get them to completion, right? We're able to figure out and understand what are the necessary supports and experiences that ensure that we can support them to get to graduation. But instead of looking at graduation and completion as this finish line, how are we as higher education really accepting the responsibility and taking ownership of success post completion? How are we not saying that, okay, we got you here, good luck, have a great life? This is more about recognizing we will be re-engaging with the learner and the worker of today many more times, hopefully, over the next couple decades after they actually, receive that credential or complete that experience with us. And so this data is pointing very directly to us understanding in that post-completion space by those individuals who engage in work integrated learning, what are both the economic and non-economic impacts that we're seeing having on our learners after graduation because of those experiences. You see the increase of the personal income, you see the increase of those feelings of, my education actually helped me achieve the goals. I'm feeling more satisfied in the work that I'm doing. And this last one is so big because it's such a big challenge we're facing right now in the national narrative. Was it worth the cost? And we often talk about cost and not just the financial, but the cost of my time, my energy, my resources, right? And really helping our learners feel like after they've graduated and after they've completed the experience, they can reflect back on it and say, yes, it was worth all of those forms of cost to me too. And so this, as we look across multiple pieces of data, this really helps us understand why a focus on work integrated learning. And we choose to talk about work integrated learning. Sometimes you hear it utilized synonymously with work-based learning. Our focus and our choice to use work integrated learning is because very much of the action-oriented focus of integration. That is another piece that I think as we've done the work, we've really learned is we've got to a place that we need to make sure we're thinking about how do we evolve the student experience to ensure these kinds of experiences are built in. They are integrated. It is not a place where we're saying, well, in order to get experience that's of value to a future employer, you're actually going to have to find that outside of your degree program or outside of your time with the university, right? You're going to have to add it on top of the many things you're already committed to, whether that's a part-time job, that might be volunteering somewhere, that might be carrying a 15, 18 credit load per semester. This is a deep focus on saying how our students have said yes to the degree program with us. How do we ensure that the experience they have already said yes to has these experiences actually integrated into it, and we're not telling them that they have to do something on top of it. So all of this leads us to a place of right now and kind of how we're approaching this work is that a college degree isn't necessarily guaranteeing that post-completion success. But we know that work integrated learning is improving post-completion success. And this is where we have made a conscious choice to focus on this and think and explore and design and test different ways and different opportunities around work integrated learning to help us better understand how can we scale it in a way that every learner has access to these experiences and is able to engage in them. But the question we get is so often, what even is work integrated learning? We often are asked for, how do you define it, right? And I'm going to say that we do not have a strict definition. There are many that exist out there, and I certainly, as follow-up to this, we're happy to share some of the research and the work that has been very influential to us. But I think for us in our space here at ASU, what we focused a lot more around is what we understand to be the important conditions necessary for an experience for it to be considered work integrated learning, rather than tagging or defining all types of experiences to be work integrated learning or not. We really dive into understanding what is necessary for it to align. So kind of as a high level overview here, talking about work integrated learning and us accepting this idea that it really encompasses any type of arrangement where a student's undertaking a learning experience, either in a direct work context or a simulated or a practice work environment. And it's ensuring that it's a place where it's enabling those students to reinforce the learning outcomes and the academic theories they're being exposed to, that they're engaging with through their curricular experience, and offering them practical applications that are deemed to be relevant to industry or community partners. And I really want to highlight that last part, that external stakeholder involvement is really where we see another key differentiator between work integrated learning and other forms of experiential learning. That's where we see those dots connect and making it a place that we know that that student is getting experience that is directly informed by an industry or community partner to be a quote unquote real world experience. It is ensuring that our students have an opportunity to practice what they're learning in some sort of experience or opportunity that is based in real need, real time context from an industry or a community partner. So I do want to put a list up here, but I really just want to dial into what I mentioned before about the focus on the conditions around the experience. And so if you're looking for a list of opportunities that could be defined as or could be considered work integrated learning, we consider all of these if they are designed with intention to be places where they can be considered work integrated learning experiences. And I want to just call quickly back to the example of internships. What many internships look like a decade to 15 years ago I would not consider work integrated learning now, right? Because they weren't being designed with intention. There wasn't a clarity in learning. There wasn't a defined supervisor who was offering coaching or mentorship in the experience, right? And so I think this is where, again, highlighting that the conditions necessary or the structure around the experience and the intentional design is a part of what really helps an experiential learning opportunity kind of step into and be able to be classified or considered a work integrated learning opportunity. So some work we've been doing at ASU over the past several years, and we've started to really, again, incorporate that national research and then our own experience with national partners too, is to better understand this journey through the work integrated learning experience. What are the elements and components of it? And how do we think about it as a journey that can be replicated? A student, it's not like our hope is that our learners actually engage in multiple work integrated learning experiences, not just one, right? But helping us see this journey and understanding this journey, and also really applying this journey to actually kind of thinking about and understanding the current conditions at our institution has actually helped us better understand where were there places along the journey that we had excellent structures, excellent systems, excellent support. But then where were there places that we were lacking, that we didn't have a lot of structure, we didn't have a lot of very direct connection. And so this, again, enabled us to kind of build out this journey that we utilize internally as well as nationally to kind of showcase what does it look like with a learner going through a work integrated learning experience. And to highlight some of the places that we see the most importance, but some of the least kind of structure or commitment around are kind of at the two ends here. It's the early stages of awareness and understanding. What does a work integrated learning experience, how does that differ for a student when they actually understand value before they step into it, right? They've been prepped or primed to understand this experience is intentionally designed to help me build skills, to help me practice knowledge that I'm learning because of my classes, to help me explore my interests, right? And then we also see the other end of this journey around meaning making and recording and communicating as another place that a lot of work can and needs to be done. And again, another place where we see how work integrated learning actually differentiates itself from other forms of experiential learning. How do we build structures that enable our learners when they're after, either during or after engaging in a WIL experience? How do we help them reflect upon it to really debrief and understand how did I grow? What did I learn? What did I discover about myself as a part of this? And how do I effectively record and communicate this experience? How do I demonstrate the experience I've gone through to a potential future employer? Or how do I demonstrate how this experience has actually, maybe helped clarify my interests in a certain career field, or maybe not, helped redirect me into a different area of interest, right? And so this is something that, again, on this journey, we have learned both here at ASU and as we've embarked upon some national work. These are some of the areas of biggest challenge too, that we are really dialed into. So it's not just about how do we get students to do the thing right in the middle? How do we not just get them to engage in the experience, but how do we actually see it as a journey that can be a holistic in nature and ensuring that the learner gets all elements of this journey as well. So what I'm going to spend the rest of our time today kind of walking through briefly is what we've done at ASU and where we've gone to national scale. The unit that I have the privilege of working with here in University College is called Work Plus Learn. And we often describe this as a portfolio of a couple different initiatives and programs that are just focused on this concept of better integrating working and learning experiences. And we have really embraced this idea that in order for us to not simply focus on internships as the gold standard for work integrated learning, we really needed to develop a much stronger portfolio of different options and different types of experiences for many reasons. Part of that has to do with alignment of academic and degree experiences for our learners. Part of that has to do with being able to offer experiences that actually meet our students where they're at in their own academic, personal, and professional development. And it's really the way for us to scale for an institution of our size. We really need to have a diversity of experiences to offer. Those that are maybe a little bit more low lift on the part of the learner, on the part of the industry partner, right? Maybe not necessitating huge technology investment, all the way on the spectrum to the other side of things that maybe are higher lift, higher commitment, and of course, really high impact for our learners too. So what I want to walk you through is a couple things we've done here at ASU and some of the national work. One area we chose to work on early on was this concept of student employment as a work integrated learning experience. How do we redesign our student employment experiences here at ASU that we have complete control over? We are the employer. This was our chance to say, hey, we were really good at telling other employers external to ASU what we needed them to be, how they were going to be a good employer, what they needed to do for our students. This was our chance to look in the mirror and ask ourselves the question, were we actually the employer that we desired for our students? And this was a huge kind of, I'd say, kind of lightning bolt moment for us of saying, oh, we've got some work to do. And this was a conscious choice for us to dive into student employment and see, how do we redesign this? How do we take control that we have to actually create a great experience for our students? Anywhere in the last couple of years, we've had anywhere from 8,500 to 12,000 students working in part-time jobs on our campus. That is no small number of students that we can influence and ensure that as a good employer, we can provide a good experience for our students to work and learn at the same time. We had the fortunate opportunity to actually grow some of what we were learning and doing here at ASU to actually a national level and supported with some grant funding and some partners across the country that enabled us to launch what we refer to as the Work Plus Collective. And that being a national movement of universities that are embracing this idea of redesigning student work on campus, with every approach at each institution being really customized into what are the institutional needs and priorities that exist in the current context there. And I think this is really important, and I'll talk about this briefly at the end about how our approach maybe has differed from some other national efforts and where we have found some differentiated success because of that. Another internal effort that we started was our ASU Work Integrated Learning Accelerator, and we had cohorts of faculty from across our university that were actually engaging together in redesigning individual and courses that were embedding WIL experiences. And through this, we had a particular focus on industry-designed projects and simulations actually being incorporated into the curriculum. And similarly, we've had the great fortune of bringing on some national partners and some funders supporting this effort to help us actually think about this nationally too. So we've been able to create and launch a cohort of institutions that are focused on this idea of how do we design and pilot test innovative models of WIL, and doing so very intentionally in partnership with ed tech and industry to really share out our learnings with the sector and in the field about where we can actually think about work integrated learning differently in the future. So I want to spend just a few moments giving you 2 or 3 slides per area to help you understand a little bit better. So as I mentioned, Work Plus at ASU, our internal effort to really think about student employment as an integrated working and learning experience that we're committing to contributing to the growth of our working learners. So you may ask, what is a working learner? Here we're defining working learner as a student who's balancing learning in college while earning a paycheck. So when we refer to working learners, we're not just referring to those students who actually work with us here at ASU in part-time jobs. Any student who's working at the same time they're learning, we consider a working learner. Work Plus in particular has focused our efforts internally on those students that are out working with us. And as I mentioned, that's anywhere from 8,500 to 12,000 on an annual basis here at ASU. And this is the commitment we've made. And this is, again, what I referenced a little bit earlier about, we have had many years of work that has gotten us to where we are on version 9.2, if you will, of Work Plus at ASU. But this is the commitment we've made to our students who actually enter into an employment situation here at ASU, that we're committing that your experience is going to contribute to the career growth through increasing career readiness, enriching the relationship between you and your supervisor, knowing so much evidence to how important this is. This isn't just about students and their student employment supervisors. This is our world of work, right? How important we know our relationships to be with supervisors. So how are we modeling and creating that environment for our students that are working with us? And lastly, this final commitment is really about dialing into helping our learners feel confident that they know and understand and can effectively articulate the transferable skills that they're learning as a part of their student employment experience to what they're doing post-completion. And simplistically, I like to point to this to say our hope is that any student who's working at ASU, it doesn't matter what their major is, it doesn't matter what their job is on campus, and it doesn't matter what they want to do after graduation. We're building a system to ensure that their student job on campus is absolutely helping them build those transferable skills. And we're ensuring they can see and understand and articulate how that has actually been a working experience that is helping prepare them for their post-completion opportunities. The way we've done this and what we've learned along the way, these kind of three buckets of work are essential internally here at ASU, enabling us to scale this to all of student employment, building culture and community around student employment, valuing student work, and valuing the individuals who supervise students. That's been a huge learning for us and a huge place of impact. We have I think our most recent number is somewhere hovering around 2,300 individuals at the university that are considered student employment supervisors. That's both a combination of staff and faculty. We want them to know they are educators too. Many of them are positions where they're not necessarily teaching classes, but they're absolutely educators in the concept that they are helping provide experiences for students to learn from, to build skills from, right? So huge community has been built in this belief in this value around student employment. We've gone from a place where student employment was very transactional in nature. A student shows up, does 2 or 3 tasks a day, right, and gets a paycheck. It's not discarding how important that paycheck and that experience is for students, but it's saying we want to ensure that it can be more and it can be a transformational experience where that student is really building skill, really understanding how the opportunity they're engaged in is helping prepare them for post-completion. Reporting and assessment, those goals and the outcomes I said on the previous slide, we have different reporting and tracking tools we utilize to help us understand where and how we're making progress towards those outcomes and where we actually need to focus more attention to ensure that all students engaged in student employment are really realizing those outcomes for themselves. And building, lastly, this kind of hub and this system and this setup where resources, tools, and best practices are widely shared. This is not about keeping stuff, within a department or within a college. This is about really leveraging and broadly sharing what is working, what do we understand to be effective at the institution, and ensuring that all students can benefit from that. So as I mentioned, our work here has led us to do some national work, and this is what we refer to as the Work Plus Collective, this coalition of institutions that are working together to really think about rethinking and redesigning the student employment experience, again, both for the benefit of the working learners as well as the supervisors. Highlighted on the screen, and my hope is that maybe a few folks from some of these institutions might be on the call today, is our 36 partner institutions that have actually been a part of the Work Plus Collective Institute. This is not the limited list of people that we have engaged with. That actually list is well over 100. But these are the institutions that have actually come through an experience that we have designed and facilitated in partnership to help each and every institution dial very specifically what is the current context around student employment at your institution, and where are we identifying needs and barriers, and how do we prioritize them? So as I mentioned earlier, this is a place where we see a bit of a differentiation in approach, where we're not simply saying, hey, here's ASU's playbook. You can take it and you can plug and play it at your institution. Because for sure, I know the vast majority of institutions I see on the screen right now, what we learned and what we're doing isn't necessarily going to be the right fit, because our context at ASU isn't the context that exists. It's not where our challenges are prioritized. They might not be the same challenges being prioritized at these other institutions. So our approach, again, has been to come alongside in partnership with our colleagues at these institutions to dive in and understand what does it look and feel like now? And then how do we actually build a plan of prioritized efforts that helps us get towards those outcomes that I was mentioning earlier? We've had over 450 hours of design experience and work that have happened through the Institute because of this. 12 different initiatives launched through some of the grant funding support we've been able to offer to well over 300 professionals that have actually engaged in the Institute and been able to share out over 250,000 in seed funding awarded to the universities that have engaged in the Work Plus Collective Institute as well. So this is just, I think, one model and one example of the impact we can have at a national level You see that number across the top of the potential to impact over 30,000 working learners across the country. And this is what we're really interested, as Sukhwant mentioned earlier. How do we have impact on the sector? How do we build partnership and coalition and collaboration at a national level that's actually enabling change and innovation across the country? I'll dive quickly into another element. So the ASU Work Integrated Learning Accelerator, again, this was our focus to look at how do we partner internally with faculty to think about individual course experiences and how we might redesign them to actually build and integrate in work-informed course projects, both with those industry projects as well as job simulations too. And so some of the things that, we look at, why are we doing this? What are we hoping for as a part of actually scaling work integrated learning at our own institution? We want to make sure that, we're building out experiences that are enabling students to engage in structured problem solving, to really understand and identify and tackle real world challenges. How can I take what I've learned in theory and directly apply it at the same time as a part of my course? I'm not having to wait until an internship, maybe a year from now. I'm not having to wait until I graduate to be able to do this. I'm doing it in real time. Oops, there we go. So kind of thinking about this just in a kind of a visual demonstration of we're repeating this essentially semester after semester, right? How do we get a cohort of faculty coming in? They're interdisciplinary in nature, or sometimes we do work with faculty that are from the same unit or same college, right? We go through an experience that helps them together and collectively think about a redesign of their course to actually bring work integrated learning experiences into it. How do the students actually engage in that? And then how do we support our students recording what they learned back to that journey? How do we make sure that they're demonstrating through application materials, through portfolio materials, things like their LinkedIn profile, wherever that might be, what's the work they did in partnership with industry on tackling some sort of questions, challenge, need project? And how do they really understand how to articulate the skills that they've been able to develop because of that? And just thinking about this as a cycle that we just keep doing more and more of with new cohorts of faculty and engaging, more and more folks across the university and identifying. And I will say we have classes and we have courses from all of our colleges across the institution right now that have had at least one or more faculty engage in these experiences. So similarly to Work Plus, we had some success internally at ASU, and we've been fortunate enough, and again, pointing to our strong interest in how do we engage and learn at a national level and share out insights with the sector. Just earlier this year, we launched the National Work Integrated Learning Accelerator Institute. So again, a cohort of institutions that are really dialed into thinking about how do we design and test innovative models of work integrated learning. We know that in order to increase scale and accessibility and exposure and actual engagement of our learners in these opportunities, we have to start figuring out multiple forms of work integrated learning that can be brought into institutions and effectively scaled. What we learned and what we understand about the work integrated learning ecosystem, three key partners that are part of this. It's not saying this is exclusive, but really key partners when we think about this ecosystem. We've got higher ed, we've got workforce and industry, and we've got ed tech as a key facilitator in this equation in the ecosystem. But the biggest challenge we've discovered in our work along the way is why we might all exist in the ecosystem. What we haven't really dialed into and figured out most effectively is how do we actually all three work together simultaneously? There's a lot of good relationships that exist one-to-one in this ecosystem, but not as many experiences or not as many opportunities that are actually bringing all three together. And that's what we're trying to do and attempting to do with the National Work Integrated Learning Accelerator. So similarly to what I shared with some outcomes, shared outcomes that we have with Work Plus Collective, we have built those with the National Work Integrated Learning Accelerator. And I can share with you that these shared outcomes were built before the launch of the Institute, and we brought together higher ed professionals, industry and workforce professionals, folks with national associations and organizations that are connected to workforce development and industry, and ed tech partners. So there was a huge community of well over 100 individuals that actually contributed, and I'd say 90 or so out of that 100 plus individuals were outside of ASU that brought together and helped us actually define these shared outcomes of what we hope to achieve in the work. And as you can see on the screen, it's everything from both the understanding and the recognition of the importance and the value of WIL. How do we increase accessibility and engagement? How do we figure out places and opportunity to test and share out our learnings of innovative approaches? And how do we really directly ensure that these are career and industry aligned experiences? We know that our students need to feel value right away when they engage in these types of things, not making a promise to them, oh, what you learned today, it'll be helpful to you in 2 or 3 years from now, right? How are we giving them experiences semester after semester where they're feeling that value immediately upon actually getting an opportunity to test and explore some of that knowledge that they've gained? So this first cohort that we've engaging in the work Integrated Learning Accelerator Institute, as you see on the screen, 8 institutions across the country, very diverse geographically, very diverse in the students they serve, regionally, the workforce challenges they're facing, and the partners they're able to engage. So we are literally I think we're into month 6 now of working with these partner institutions. A lot to be learned, a lot coming out of this. And similar to Work Plus Collective, all of our learnings are going to be shared through our website, our Work Integrated Learning Accelerator website. Materials that are built will be shared for free. They fall under a Creative Commons license. They will be able to be shared, download, customize, utilize as needed in the hope that the work that is happening by, a smaller group of institutions can actually have a much larger impact at a national level as well. So the last thing I want to do before turning it over to Sukhwant, back over, is just to highlight a couple things of like, what are places that we really understand have been the points of success with our approach? You may have heard hints to it along the way, but we really leverage design thinking and user-centered design as a framework to how we go about our work. And the how is where we feel we have seen some differences in success. We see all of our users as co-designers, first and foremost. They aren't just a partner in the work or a collaborator, a stakeholder. Our students helped us design what student employment looks like now at ASU. It wasn't just some faculty and staff sitting in a room saying, what do we think it should be, right? Our students were involved as co-designers every step of the way. They continue to be. As we make iterations on what Work Plus is, we continue to bring them in feedback sessions, in design sessions, where they have the opportunity to be honest with us. Yes, we love this. Oh gosh, no, we hate this. Can we get rid of it, right? They are an absolute co-designer with us alongside the faculty and staff that are supervising student employees, just as an example. I mentioned this earlier too, around institutional capacity and understanding existing conditions. It is so important that we are understanding the problems we're attempting to tackle before we begin designing the solution. That's, I think, a major challenge and a common error we make in higher ed is that we are so quick to run to try to solve something that sometimes we don't have exact clarity on what it is we're really trying to solve for or improve. And so that's where we've seen a lot of success with our partner institutions in spending time deeply understanding the current conditions, the existing context, and then how do we use that information to very intentionally plan towards and prioritize the work that needs to happen to make systemic change. We're not talking about just building interventions or building programmatic experiences that get thrown into or layered on top of. In many cases, we are looking at institutional level transformation. And I think this approach has really helped in thinking about that and prioritizing the work. And lastly, I'll just comment on the value, I think, of the network. Helping people see that you are in a community of people that are leading innovations helps you not only not feel alone, especially in the hard moments, right? But to really see how many other people out there are interested in this and how we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are so many insights that are being learned by others that we can lean on, that we can bring into our own institutions and contextualize them within our own, existing conditions or what it looks like within our own institutions, right? And so I think that there's been so much value in the networking, the coalition building that has happened because of some of the national work that we've been able to do. So with that, I want to pause and I want to turn it back over to my colleague, Sukhwant.
Thank you so much, Brandee. And I've been keeping track of the questions that have been posted. Some I've responded to and some we can discuss now. But as you look at this work, I hope you notice a couple of things. One, so desire to take on how we have organized ourselves, like student employment, one of those things that is deeply under our control, and work integrated learning, again, a solution for a challenge our students face within the spans of our own control. How might we design them? How might we think about them and so on? Then Brandee mentioned it. I'm a designer by training, so let me say this again. we must solve the problems in the context in which they exist. So, we have taken a particular approach. Your approach to that question might be very different. But we have followed a fairly systematic structure on problem definition and developing solutions. So when we work with campuses, the site visits our colleagues have made there, it's a structured process of problem solving that we facilitate. And various partners focus on different aspects of the problems that is appropriate for their campus and their campus culture. So we're not here talking about scaling a particular magical solution. What we are interested in taking on a problem together with our colleagues, systematically working on it and learning together from it. So work plus collective, the way in which it has approached the problem illustrates that. The work integrated learning accelerator is a little bit different. Here, we're not only working with other academic institutions, we're very much focused on this space in which learning takes place, the classroom space, work with faculty, but also working with a set of ed tech partners. And, in your roles, you probably get those emails daily on whatever new platform that is in vogue. But our sort of pitch and our interest here is how might we bring some of the startups in this space, which are early in their innovation curve, and help them have a sandbox where they can work with educational institutions to improve the quality of their products. Because if we want to scale work integrated learning at the level at which our students need it and demand it, then we'll need some, at least in case of ASU, we are an egalitarian institution that uses technology to scale, right? So if we bring similar kind of approach to the other space, technology plays a really important role. So how do we move them from this competitive space to a space where they're thinking together and working with us in developing technology that is actually scalable and increases the size of the pie? So it's an intriguing project from that perspective. We didn't really dive into it from the technology designer's perspective, but those are some of the things that we are doing. Now, I saw some posts, no different. I mean, many of you have your institutions listed there. If you want to know who's working with us, just drop Brandee or me a note, and we'll let you know who on your campus is engaged with these issues. If you are interested in any assets, design of design sessions, problem posing, particular facilitation techniques, all of that material is either available or we can package and share it with you. So you don't have to spend time designing these kinds of things if you want to take on the question on your campus as such. Why don't I stop there? There are questions there. Many of you have questions here. Julia, I don't know what process you have in mind in terms of just posing some questions. We can try to attempt to answer them, but we don't have answers to every question you're going to ask. I can assure you that, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, just a reminder, if you want to jump in and join the conversation, just select raise your hand and we will call on you. But maybe a good place to start is the longer discussion that happened in the chat about on-campus employment, work-study jobs. Is that work integrated learning? Are they better or worse than internships? And the real concern that some of us have about exploiting students as a labor force on campus. And I wondered if you wanted to expand on what you've already put in the chat.
Yeah, I think I have not read all the chat, so please pardon me if you added something there. So one, we are an egalitarian institution. Our students work. They work to put themselves through college. And the question that we asked ourselves, what is it that we can do to turn that into a learning experience for them? Is on-campus, so we are doing very structured assessment right now. We have funding from Strata, we have external evaluators. That work will continue, I think, in the coming months, and we'll have more details to share in this space. But the intensity of the treatment here could be very different than a classic internship, right? So it depends on how things are structured. And it was rightly pointed out, the types of work experiences that exist on a campus vary greatly, right? But be privileged. I must point it out. So I'm an architect, and I talk often about the work of the hand and work of the mind. And I would say neither is more important than the other. I mean, there are times when you must know how to lay bricks on bricks, and there are times you must know how to conceptualize a building. And all these things come together to actually make you successful in the task that you are trying to do. I'm not trying to be poetic here. I mean, really, the sort of practical understanding of how to take directions from an adult, how to work with others, how to take pride in the work that you are doing, how to arrive on time and do these things. We might talk of them as higher order skills, but please just sort of look around you. Think about some of your most qualified sort of people in your network and see how they fail sometimes because they're not able to execute on these basic skills. So at least in our case, the approach that we have taken is that we value the work of the hand as much as we value anything else. We're not distinguishing between these things. And what we found in early studies as we were launching this work is that relationship between the supervisor and the student is critical. And it has an impact on their GPA. Right? So this is how do you start using work integrated learning, particularly as a student success strategy, or student employment as a student success strategy. So that was the initial prompt. So focusing on it almost independent of the work, if they can be responsive to the student need, if students feel encouraged and heard and connected, they can connect them with other resources. Now it might vary, that skill might vary. Based on who the supervisor is, but how can we raise that level of skill? So that's Brandee and her team has been running these certifications where student supervisors go through this and they get certified, and their skill level on how to supervise is being raised. So there are those kinds of things that we are doing, but it is driven largely to improve outcomes for our students, not only in terms of creating work experiences that are of higher quality, their ability to articulate, but also their immediate success as students in this case. So there's a lot in there. And again, your solution will vary based on your campus culture, what you think is most problematic, where you can rally resources and people, what connects with your mission, et cetera. But that's the approach that we have taken at ASU.
So we have a couple more really great questions in the chat. The first one is, how do you view colleges that have applied degrees? And is work integrated learning automatically included in the curriculum?
That's a great question. And I don't know. It's like I don't have a pre-made answer. I have not thought about it before. It depends on the kinds of experiences the students are having. I mean, we shared qualities of those experiences. Are students able to articulate the experience in ways that are effective? Are they able to explore those things? I mean, we have, I'm an architect by training, applied experiences are built into it. That has been part of the studio. But then other parts of it, are you getting feedback directly from an employer? So one of the things that we are doing using a platform that we use on our campus, projects from industry are embedded in the classroom. And it's not just working on a problem that is coming from industry, it is also getting a chance to get feedback on your work directly from an employer. So if those kinds of things, those qualities are built in, then you certainly are having one kind of experience. If it's just simply, a bachelor's of applied studies degree where there's sense of application and industry connection with a particular job is narrowly defined, I'm not so sure that falls in the category of simply work integrated learning if that feedback is not there. That's my view. Brandee's view might differ on it. Brandee, jump in anytime you want to add something. And my colleagues on the call might have a very different view on this as well.
So Jennifer Singh asks, in what ways is work integrated learning thinking about AI and the use of AI in the work setting and in educational settings?
Wow. Okay. So this is a really provocative question. And it's not only, I would combine, at least in case of ASU, we're doing a lot of work on AI, and we are doing a lot of work on virtual simulations. Particularly, we have technology called Dreamscape, where you can use virtual reality to simulate particular scenarios. And the kind of applications that are emerging in this context, which can be used to train our students to do new kinds of work, they sort of are at the edge of my own imagination. For example, you can practice interviewing techniques where you can get immediate feedback on the tone of your reply. Like I sort of participated in sort of hearing and testing about those kinds of things. So there is that kind of space where we can really help our students prepare for the work and for the space that is emerging as such. I'll say that as one thing. The second thing that we hear, and here we have a real practical application, and if you talk to any employer, they're inundated with perfect resumes and cover letters. Right? Everything they're getting, it's like, it's just at a level of finish that is very different. So then the question emerges, how do you know if somebody can do the things that they're claiming to do? So one of the projects that we worked in that was funded, I believe, with Walmart, and I forget the other funder that was really sort of bringing some of the funding to it, was how can we validate skills and help students create these validated smart resumes that can then have the evidence that they are doing this work. So these are the kind of tests that we are doing ourselves. How can we, partly that was provoked by a problem we were trying to solve, how do you remove name bias from hiring using smart resumes? So that's the problem we were working on and trying to test these kinds of technologies. So that's sort of the second application of it, using AI and other kinds of things. And lastly, just the challenge our students face in today's workspace, where their ability to do things becomes a differentiator. So these intelligent portfolios and other kinds of things where they can demonstrate that they can do that. And if you can have validation by employers added to it, it makes them far more competitive in that landscape. So I think we are in the middle of significant flux, from changing the jobs themselves, changing how we teach, changing how the work experience is designed, changing how we validate that experience, and how students compete in that environment. And we are playing with pieces of it in our own work.
For sure. Sorry, my name is Abram Apatano. I'm actually a junior year student here at Colorado State University. So I managed to sneak inside the faculty call. So this is actually super fun to see. But I'm the president of the marketing association here, as well as part of a couple of different groups is the Dean Student Leadership Council and the College of Business. And I'm also running for vice president here at Colorado State University for the student body. Kind of the lens I've seen it as an economics major has been more through structural unemployment coming through AI. And so kind of what I've been trying to figure out is what's the value of my degree as I kind of pass through this system, and figuring out, like, as a success metric, like how can we increase endowment and also enrollment through these things that we're trying to implement. Just because, like, I think the only real hard metric we can measure, like, I think there's a bunch of qualitative things we can measure in terms of having connections or being able to network with people. But I think the hard metrics, the endowment, the enrollment, how many students are actually coming in to these colleges now because they have a system that works and produces graduates that go to places that they want to be employed, has kind of been how I'm trying to measure success here at Colorado State University. What I'm trying to develop is this nonprofit called the Pre-Skilling Institute. And essentially what this would be able to do is have students go through the Pre-Skilling Institute, which would connect them with a bunch of different quote unquote vendors. And these would just essentially be companies that students would be interested, but it's going to be in a super narrow field, specifically in marketing, because I have the most experience there. And so it's just going to be trying to prove out this pilot in the marketing industry first. And the cohorts will be anywhere from 10 to 15 students. And I'm going to make it something more of a capstone kind of opportunity for students that show more rigor, just because I want to be able to prove out this system first before expanding it to like a bunch of different people. So that's kind of my plan right now. But I just wanted to hear what everybody else's ideas are on it and get some feedback.
So, Rob, let me just say this. I love the fact that you hacked this system and you joined this call. I think that's fantastic. And I love the initiative and energy you are bringing to, as a student and as a student leader, to thinking about the space you occupy and thinking about it in a very hopeful way, in a very designerly way, where you believe you can do things and you can change the space in which you exist. I mean, all I can say is kudos to you. From my perspective, and my colleague Brandee Popaden-Smith said this earlier, there's a significant shift happening in how we frame student success. First, we focused on access, so enrollment was key. Then completion, so degree completion, retention rates, graduation rate, that whole schema is sort of central to how we organize things in undergraduate education. The emergent schema, the emerging ranking systems, the way in which things will work from financial aid to other kinds of things are all going to be around post-graduation success, particularly around employment. So I think that's the way in which we are thinking about it, but I really appreciate your comments.
Unfortunately, we're at time. There were more questions in the chat. Great questions. So thank you all for participating and for being here today. And many thanks to Sukhwant and Brandee for sharing their important work. This is really well aligned with where we're trying to go at UERU, particularly in the context of the Boyer 2030 Commission report. And we're just so pleased that you could be here and share your wisdom. If you have other questions, please feel free to reach out to our presenters. Their contact information is on the screen. We will slides and the recording on our UERU website. Thank you all.